When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. Oh, the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home.
So I'm going to let you know how the situation was before the war broke out in the northern states. So we all know that even before the Civil War, the northern states didn't have much slavery going on at all. The northern states had more bourgeois values, and most of them really thought that slavery was wrong. So many people reacted on the slavery thanks to the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was published in the year of 1852, because that book made them understand the circumstances in which these slaves had to live with. And in the year of 1850, the northern states and the southern states tried to compromise and get along, but the compromise still included that the slavery was legal. In 1857, it got to the point where they decided that the black people were not allowed to get a citizenship in the US, and also that the slaves that had escaped from the south to the north had to return to the south. And the northern states still thought that that was wrong, and it was something that they didn't stand for. And every time a new state was created, the northern and the southern states couldn't make an agreement whether or not this new state should allow slavery. And these were a few reasons why the war broke out. So I guess every one of you know, or at least have heard of Abraham Lincoln. He was born in Kentucky in the year of 1809 and started to get involved in politics when he was around 28 years old. He was against slavery, and he used to work as a lawyer actually in Illinois, but later on he joined the Republican Party, and in the year of 1960 he became the President of the United States, thanks to the support he had from the northern states, which were very populous. So well, the northern states had always been standing for something different than the southern when it came to the question about slavery. But since way back there are more things they disagreed on, so it's not just about the slavery. But when you think about the American Civil War, you will refer to the question of slavery, and of course that is nothing but right, because that was a huge part of the American Civil War. But the northern states also wanted all states to kind of melt together so that they could be a whole nation, and that, you know, all the laws would apply every state in America, and they basically wanted a central government. And the southern states obviously wanted something else. And the northern states also wanted that all the uninhabited areas were to be settler societies, and in which the immigrants from Europe could live. And in the northern states, they also wanted to keep the protective tariff. So, well, this is some things that the northern states stood for, and some things that they thought was right, and a few reasons for why the war broke out.
Before the Civil War broke out, there had been much discussion about the slaves in America and if it was something that should be banned or allowed. Many of the northern states thought that slavery were against the Constitution and didn't allow them to live as free men in a country that had been partially built on the idea that everyone is a free man and equal. The southern states was the one fighting for allowing slavery and make it easier to expand the business. Needed these slaves to work at their huge cotton farms, which were a huge part of the southern economy. If they no longer was allowed to have slaves working for them, the economy would weaken and the South become much poorer, something they would never allow. During the year 1850, slavery was the central question in politics, and it was becoming more tense between the two sides. During the election in 1860, the Republican Party, led by Abraham Lincoln, used the question about slavery in his campaign, and it worked. But even before Lincoln had been selected to president, 7 states decided to break away from the others and start their own republic, where slavery would be allowed. South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas were the states that broke away. All were southern states that needed these slaves. They called themselves for the Confederate States of America, with Jefferson Davis as a president. After 2 months, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee joined this confederation. The other 25 states did not support this confederation, and they didn't accept the way that they had broken away. They saw it more as a rebellion. The southern states defended themselves by saying that this was a choice they had been forced to make due to what the northern states were doing, without thinking of how it would damage the South. Before the southern states broke away from the Union, a decision had been made in the North that made slaves that escaped from states where slavery was allowed free men. During this time, people still saw the African slaves and other black people as a barbaric race that was less worthy as the white race, and they feared that the new America would be overtaken by all the slaves working there. This is one of the strong reasons to why the southern states were so determined to keep on with the slave business, so they could be controlled and not be a threat against the new America.
The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, between the North and the South states of America, the bloodiest time in American history. The war started in 1861 when Lincoln was elected president. Lincoln was against the slavery in the South. However, not everyone was against slavery, and therefore 11 out of 36 states grounded their own country, the Confederate States of America. Slavery. It wasn't only the fact that the slaves were treated bad, but also that the wealthy families of the South made money out of them. This was something the Southerners did not agree with, and that's probably the biggest reason to why the war broke loose. The first shot in the war was shot on April 12, 1861, as a Confederate force attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina. During the war, all kind of shit happened. The North states constructed a naval blockade so that the southern states couldn't transfer cotton to Europe. Thousands and thousands of people died, and amongst them lots of civilians. Even if the North states won the war, the Confederate States won a lot of battles during the war, including the first battle of them all, the Battle of Bull Run in Virginia. For those who don't know, Bull Run was a river in Virginia. The war ended in 1865, and 5 days before the capitulation of the southern states, Lincoln was shot. He was enjoying a play, and from behind he was killed by a shot in the head. The man who shot him was named John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln was a good man, and he didn't die in vain. He got rid of slavery. Even if he didn't get rid of it all, he made an impression, and after some time the slavery was gone. In conclusion, even if lots of bad things happened during the war, something good came out of it. The slavery was gone, and America became united once again.
If we compare the American Civil War with World War II, we do find at least one similarity. The Southern states in the American Civil War wanted slavery to be allowed. They thought the black people weren't good enough, that they were less worth than white people. To treat people differently because of history, color, and religion was something the northern states were against. Now then, what had this to do with the Second World War? Well, during the Second World War, the Jewish people were mistreated by the Nazis, and all the other countries who were involved didn't agree to the Nazis' beliefs and actions. If we look at the differences instead, we find a few more. First, as we can hear by the names of the wars, the American Civil War just involved one continent, and actually just one country, though the Second World War reached out to almost every corner of the world. They had access to much more advanced weapons during World War II than they had during the American Civil War, just because of the technological developments.
63 ended slavery, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. And we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. In 1864, hurrah, hurrah, it called for 500,000 more, hurrah, hurrah. In 1865, they talked rebellious strife, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. And we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home.